spent around the United States and Canada. We did puppetry and drama and singing and evangelism on the street. And I was incredibly happy. And I came back, and there were a few things that occurred. One of them was the death of a pastor of our church. When he died, he was such a kind man. Like I don't even know how that triggered me, like to shake my fist at heaven and be angry with God. He was kind of like a grandfather figure to me. I started looking at our family life, and I didn't see personally reward and blessing for my parents. Like when I look at my parents' life, I didn't see reward and blessing for all the time that they put in to serving God. I didn't see any tangible reward now. And yes, I understood all the scripture behind laying up treasures in heaven, and everything we're doing is for an eternal reward. But there is scripture that says you'll have a reward in this life. And I didn't see any reward on it. So I was convincing myself, well, if these other people that are living with no rules have nicer things, more time to have fun and do all the things they want to do, and they're not serving God, and we are serving God, and there's nothing good, beneficial now, like, I just didn't understand it. So I decided that when I could make my own decision about going to church, that was not something I was going to put my time to. My thought was, I can still have a relationship with God, and I love God. He lives in my heart. I said a prayer when I was 5 years old, and so I'm saved, but I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Like, that was just my mentality in that situation. And it's never a jumping off a cliff. It's sliding down a hill when you start compromising and deciding you're going to live however you want to live. Because there are some things in the beginning that I would have never thought I would do, that within a year or two, I was doing things that I never would have thought I would do. I graduated high school when I was 17, and I was already working almost full-time hours when I was 15 years old. So even after school, I would walk down. There was a grocery store, and I did all the produce, and I also did catering with them. And so from the time I was 15 in high school, I was working 30 plus hours a week. And then sometimes I would, work more than was allowed by law whenever we did catering jobs, sometimes 16 hours. But I was a hard worker. I was, raised to do that. We didn't have a farm, but we lived next to a farm, and I grew up helping on that farm. So you get a work ethic, and my father had a fantastic work ethic. When I went to college after high school, I still was working to pay for my own college. So I had jammed 18 credit hours at college into 3 days, and I worked 5 days full time. So I would be school Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Thursday night, I would go to work, and I'd work full-time hours until I came back on Tuesday. So all work through Monday and then drive back to school. During all that time, there was just no time for church. And when I did go to church, it was just to make my parents happy. It wasn't because I wanted to be there. And it seemed like after I came back from that youth ministry trip, somewhere in that year between age 16 and 17, I didn't see any value in going to church anymore. Most of the people that were around me, I saw they were just hypocrites. And they came to church, they listened to the same preaching I did. They didn't live that way. We had a couple of teenage girls in the church get pregnant from boys in the church, and it was like, I don't see any difference between these people in the church and people outside the church. So for me, it was like, I just didn't see the value in it. So I just stopped going to church. And So I didn't really have a desire to read the Bible either. It's just that I had memorized a lot of scripture, so I had scripture in me. And once I was away from everyone in the church and all that, the only influence I had were people of the world. So when I got to college and I'm living on campus, even though it was a dry campus, um, I was drinking a lot. I mean, heavily. But it wasn't like I started drinking then. The first time I had alcohol, I was 13 years old at a birthday party that my parents didn't let us go spend nights at people's homes that they didn't know. But this was a daytime birthday party, and it was the first year I was in public school, and I didn't like the alcohol when I tried it, but I did try beer that day and hard liquor. And then when I was 15 years old, we were staying overnight. The whole family was staying overnight at my cousin's house. And when the adults were upstairs sleeping, we were all sleeping in the downstairs bedrooms. And my cousin had bottles of alcohol, and I actually consumed, I had never consumed much alcohol before that. But that night, when I was 15 years old, I went into alcohol shock, and I stopped breathing 4 times. So I'm downstairs not breathing, and my sister is slapping me until I wake back up. And, vomiting. So I would stop breathing. She would smack me. I'd wake up, and then I'd start throwing up. And so our parents are in the house, and I'm literally half dead downstairs from drinking. But when I was 17 at college, it was around. It was there all the time, everywhere. And I shared an apartment with 3 other guys, and our apartment was one of 4 in that complex, and then the complex had another 20 quads like ours, where there's 4 apartments. And there was never an end to people having parties. And so as I was trying to educate myself with higher education, I was drinking all night long. And it got to the point where I was 130 pounds and consuming about 1.5 liters of alcohol without passing out. So just within that first year of college, I drank so much that, like, if I would have done that day one, it would have killed me. But the tolerance I had built up, just to tell you how far I went, how quickly. But I had no other influences in my life. But God was still showing up in dreams and visions during that whole time. I mean, it was really a crazy time. The first time I can ever remember having dreams or visions of things was, I don't know, I was 6 or 7 years old. And I mean, vivid, apocalyptic type Battle of Armageddon dreams. We didn't watch movies, HBO, anything like that. I mean, my parents, it was like the ABC Sunday Night Special was the only movies we had watched. It was literally listening to Christian programming, listening to Christian music as a child, and watching shows that were clean shows. I mean, my parents didn't tolerate anything that was the least bit compromised. So I didn't have any influences that would have been where something came in and I'm seeing it in my mind when I sleep. It was literally like angels and demons and doing battle, and I thought I was crazy. But it also, that's where, whenever I talked earlier about being volatile as a child, I think because I didn't want to express it to my parents and it kept happening, it was like I had this rage inside of me. And but that was the first time. But then whenever I was at college, I mean, quite literally, I had been drinking one night, and I went to bed, and 2 hours after I went to bed, I wake up from a dream where I could see my parents standing at a funeral, a graveside service for a funeral. And I knew that it was the man from the hospital that my father shared a room with. My father had a pulmonary embolism whenever I was 14 years old. So he had a blood clot in his leg that went through his heart and into his lung, and they thought he was gonna die when I was 14. And he shared a room with this guy. And when I'm at college, 17 years old, I know, I can't see the guy's face. I just know that it's him in the casket. And I can see my parents standing at the graveside, and it's pouring down rain. And I looked out the window, and it was sunshine, 10 a.m., right? And I had been drinking all night till morning. And when the sun came up is when I went to sleep, and 10 a.m. I'm waking up from this dream. And 2 days later, my mother called me, and she said, hey, I just wanted to tell you that, I forget his name, but this guy passed away. And I said, oh, I know. And it just jumped out at me. I said, I know. And she goes, what do you mean you know? I said, was the funeral on Wednesday? And she said, yes. I said, was it raining when you were at the graveside? She said, yes. I said, yeah, I saw it in a dream. It was like God was still showing up in the midst of me just destroying everything I had been brought up to know was right and wrong.